In today's quick Grok video, we will talk about creating reference datasets in TopBraid EDG. I have an example reference dataset prepared here in Excel spreadsheet. Reference data is data that categorizes other data by assigning tags to it. Here I have a reference dataset of shipment methods from a fictitious e-commerce company that helps other companies ship goods around, and depending on the pickup and drop-off locations, actually assigning to those shipment transactions some carrier methods, shipping for lower cost situation. And they have a number of shipment codes. And this is a reference data set. I'm going to create an edge. Prior to creating the reference dataset, I need to define in Edge its structure. So back in the spreadsheet, we see that there is a code, a name, description, and then underlying carrier methods. In order to create a structure, I need to define an ontology in TopBraid EDG. It can be an existing ontology that defines structure for multiple reference datasets. I could create a new ontology as well, and that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to call it rep data ontology. I'll start by creating a class that will hold my shipment method codes, and I'm going to call the class shipment method. Now I need to give the class properties corresponding to columns in my spreadsheet. The first column is called codes, and I'm going to create an attribute like that. It's a string, and with codes you always need a code for every entry, and it needs to be exactly one. So this is what I will say. There is also a description. And there is a carrier method. Then there is a name. In case of a name, I'm not going to create a new property. I'm going to use existing one, RDFS label. And there's a handy function here where I could go and say add label property declaration. I'm now almost done and close to being able to create my reference dataset. But first, I need to tell Edge which property actually contains a code. Edge will use this property to assign URIs for the individual reference data items based on the code value. And to do that, I create a constraint, URI start constraint, by entering the beginning of the URI I'm going to use example.org, and then since it's a shipment method, I'll just use this abbreviation, and then the code will be appended at the end. This way, TopBraid EDG knows that this property contains code values. And then finally, I am going to declare this new class as public. This is important because this tells TopBraid EDG that I'm going to have instances of this class in Edge. Sometimes the ontologies can be quite large and you not necessarily want to expose all classes for creation of instances. This is all I needed to do. I'm going to create a reference dataset now. Call it shipment methods. I always need to select the ontology that defines the structure for this reference dataset. And now I need to indicate which class defines the structure for this particular reference dataset, because of course I could have multiple classes in the ontology. There are a couple of ways to do it. If I click on codes, I could just select this main entity class, which has been selected. And another approach of doing it is on the Manage tab. It can be selected here as well. I will now import my data. Choose my file, shipping methods. Okay. I am importing the first worksheet, and I am importing it into the shipment method class. Pick the spreadsheet pattern that fits my spreadsheet the best. This is no hierarchy pattern. All the column mappings Edge has already guessed for me, except for label, and I'm going to accept them, and I'm going to map the label. And this is basically it. All right, so this message tells me that some codes have been repeated multiple times, and this is correct because I have multiple shipment methods, carrier methods for the codes. They are repeated multiple times. Here, note that the label and description is just shown one time, but the codes are repeated multiple times for each carrier method. And TopBraid Edge merged this data. And here are my codes. For the convenience, I'm going to bring the code column here, and I am going to make this my default view. So next time I go into this reference data set, this is how my search results table appears. Okay. And this is the information as I imported. Once this reference data set is put under management in TopBraid Edge, I could start changing data, creating new codes, and working with it as necessary. Also make this reference data set available to any consuming downstream system. I could also modify metadata for the reference data set itself. There is a number of metadata fields are available, such as the status, description of the reference data set, whether it's internal or external, how often it changes, and information of this kind. I could also say that it's a canonical enterprise reference data set, for example. And then if I have some other local reference data sets, they would be mapped to it. With this accomplished, let me show you a couple of variations that I could have made. One variation is that instead of manually entering each field, each property for the shipment method class, I could use this spreadsheet to import those property definitions. So let me create a different ontology, web data 2. I'll create a shipment method class again. in this ontology. But instead of entering properties one by one, I will use the spreadsheet to auto-generate those properties. Select the class, go under Modify, and add property shapes from spreadsheet column. Choose the file, same file we used. Load. And now you'll see the properties that will be created for each. And you also see the property type. In this case, TopBraid EDG correctly selected string. It will look at the data and pick the most appropriate property type. I will change this one to label because I don't want to have a new property. I want to use RDFS label. And then I proceed from here as I normally did to, as I did before, to, for example, say that this is the code value by declaring QRI start. I could add min and max count and or change them. For example, make it one, and so on. So that's one alternative. Let's go back to our ontology and let's make another adjustment. So back in our spreadsheet, here we have carrier methods, and we have imported them as strings. But let's say we wanted to have a reference data set with carrier methods themselves and give them codes as well. I actually have that option prepared where I just have carrier methods and each one has a code. So to implement this alternative, I'm going to create a new class. And in this case, I just want to have a label and a code. So this will reuse the previously created code property. All right, and now instead of having a literal value or an attribute that says carrier method, what I want to do, I want to have a relationship between the shipment method and the carrier method. So I am going to delete this definition and create a new definition as a relationship. Say one or more, and I'm going to select carrier method. All right, I made this change. And let me now update my reference data set to reflect these changes. First of all, let me create a reference data set for carrier methods. I'm using the same ontology. Oh, I forgot one step. I should also make the new class public. Use the same approach to select this class as a main entity. Let's see. What is the situation with the code? Yeah, I needed to declare the code property to be a primary key for this carrier method. The same as I did for the shipment code. As people, of course, we know that if it's called code, it's a code, but TopBraid EDG needs us to say that. And I'm going to use this. So this is fine. I could now import data. Exactly as I did before, importing the carrier method. I'm going to use the second worksheet, same spreadsheet. Right. So I've got my code map, and this is my label. I've got my carrier methods. And you see how URI is formed from that string that I've entered, and then the carrier, and then the code is added to form the URI. Now I'm going to go to the previously created reference dataset, shipment method. I'm going to clear its content. Since I want to change the carrier methods, it's now a relationship. So I'm going to reload the data again. Import. I'm going to use the third worksheet. Let me show you that. So that's similar, except that it uses the codes for the carrier methods to establish the relationship. And I'm going to do one more thing. I'm going to include the carrier method reference dataset in the shipment methods. And now I see that instead of strings, I have links to my carrier methods. And if I wanted to see, for example, all carrier methods that this, all shipment methods that this, FedEx Ground carrier method is linked to, I could use a references panel. All right, this concludes our overview of creating a reference dataset in TopBraid EDG. We have seen how you could manually create a structure for a reference dataset. We could see this as how you alternatively can use the prepared spreadsheet. to have Edge auto-generate structure for a reference data set. You've seen how to tell Edge which property will contain the code. In case of reference datasets, each reference dataset entity has to have this unique primary key, which is a code. And then you've seen how to import reference data, and you also seen how to connect two different reference datasets, in our case, shipment methods and carrier methods. Thank you for watching.